I'm Guillermo from Fortivo Music Channel, and welcome to Music Talks, our video podcast series. These are relatively short interviews with prominent people from all walks of life who don't work in the music industry, but who are in many ways impacted by music. Today we're going to be talking with Danielle Strachman, a Silicon Valley venture capitalist who is also an incredibly knowledgeable music fan. She's been an educator and an entrepreneur who now invests in startups started by young founders. Even though I've known Danielle for a few years, we never really talked about music, so I was surprised to learn that she was a classically trained clarinet player. I'm sure you'll enjoy our wide-ranging conversation, from her blasting Rachmaninoff as a teenager to her hosting Zoom dance parties during the pandemic. Also, she put an incredible amount of thought into her playlist, so you'll definitely be inspired by her creative insights. So let's get started. Here's my conversation with Danielle Strachman. Good afternoon, Danielle Strachman. Thanks for joining us. So happy to have you here.
Hey, Guillermo. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I know we've talked over the years about so many different things, from venture capital to startups to lunar settlement to a lot of interesting topics, but we've never really talked about music. So this is going to be a first for us. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
And I know that music is very important to you. I've actually even seen, I think, some of your tweets on Twitter. You've even put some posts up about music. So,
oh, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Music has been a big passion and part of my life for a long time. Probably like the biggest piece of it was I was classically trained on clarinet.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. From the time that I was, I don't know, like 8-ish through 22, I was doing intensive study. Competed at a competition level, played semi-professionally in my early 20s. But then, I got bitten by the start your own business bug, and life takes off. And, sometimes music takes the things that we love sometimes take a second seat later on. But played for a long time. My dad is a wonderful guitar player, so always grew up with music in the house. He's sort of like a folky singer-songwriter type. He does actually really amazing arrangements of other people's songs, and I just always felt like really pleased to be able to just have music around. And then over the pandemic, I decided I wanted to do something where I could measure time, because time was feeling very strange, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So I took up guitar lessons at that point, and have been doing guitar lessons since then, which has been great. So music is super important. I can remember lots of funny stories about, listening to things and your sister busting in, or, it's just like, family stuff and music to me go together.
Nice. Do you still play clarinet?
I played, I have a friend who's a lawyer, and she inspired me. And she's like, we could both dust off our chops. She plays piano, and she said, you should come over and we'll play together. And I said, okay, my embouchure is going to need at least a month to get anywhere where I can be functional. So we both practiced a couple, simple pieces for about a month. And then we came together and we played together a couple years ago. And it was funny because all the performance stuff came right back. Like, her son and her husband were at home. And so immediately I was in okay, we're doing a run through and we just have to go all the way and no stopping. And I was like, wow, that's funny that it's just right there. And I haven't done any music performance in a long time. But I break it out once in a while, but it's pretty rare at this point.
Yeah, it's amazing how the human mind works and how it's wired, and deeply wired. Like, I took classical piano lessons when I was 8 to 14, maybe something like that. And then I picked up the electric guitar and joined a rock band, went the other direction. But every now and then I'll sit down at a piano, and I haven't really played since then. I'll sit down at a piano. It's like, holy cow, I can actually still semi-remember. If I sat down and practiced for a month, I'd probably be back,
Yeah, no, that piece is really amazing. I mean, the muscle memory, especially when you're younger and you learn something, it's just so ingrained. It's like, oh yeah, no, I know where all the different notes are. My technique is certainly not where it needs to be, but it's like, I remember what I need to do. And it's like, okay, get back into practice, and here it is. And makes me think oh man, should have learned more instruments when I was younger.
It's interesting, even in doing these interviews, how heavily influenced people were by their parents or their parents' music.
Yeah.
Which was interesting for me raising my kids. I was very cognizant of like what music I was exposing them to. And so it was great that my kids, grew up and decided that they liked like AC/DC or something. And I'm like, wait, how do you know AC? Oh, that's right, because I was listening to it.
You play it, yeah. Uh-huh.
It's interesting. All right. And how's your guitar going?
It's coming along. I take a lesson most weeks, not every week because I travel a lot for work, but I was telling my guitar teacher recently, I was like, listen, even if all I do this week is get to the lesson, that's way better than not having guitar lessons. And it's coming along. Like, I mean, when I first took it up, I could play some chords, but I couldn't really like rhythmically strum. Like I didn't have a sense for how to do that. And I've been getting a little bit more into finger picking. And actually, this has been really fun. There's a women's guitar camp that I went to last year that I'm going to go to again in January. And that's been really great because it's this group of women who are predominantly older, probably in their 60s, 70s, who have started it, who started it like 30 years ago, who run this camp. And it's a lot of learning and really supportive. And they encourage everybody to play at, the little open mic night they set up every night. And that the performance piece always makes me really nervous, but it's always a great opportunity to like try something, get feedback, get encouragement. So that's been really fun. So I have one of those coming up. And so I've been figuring out what do I want to prep so that I'm ready for those, open mic sessions.
Yeah, it's one thing that's been interesting looking at musicians today and up and coming artists today, that they seem to be, I don't know, maybe it's just I'm getting old and I misremember things or something, but there used to be like different skill sets. You had songwriters, you had recording artists who would record session musicians who would record in the studio, and then you had like performers, who'd be out on stage, live audiences and stuff. And it was kind of rare to get the combination of all of them together, maybe the Beatles, folks like that. But now these kids seem to be doing everything. They write their songs, they perform everything, they record everything. On top of that, they do their own videography, their own sound engineering, like everything, and putting together YouTube videos and stuff. It's just incredible.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's making me think of a group actually, which is I think I can't remember if it's okay. Here it is. Yeah, it's Greta Van Fleet.
Yes.
I don't know if you've come across them, but they came to mind when you were talking about this. I don't know if they do their videography, but it's like, I mean, as far as I know, like they're out of Michigan, they write their own songs, they're performers, and they're like old school rock performers, but they're 20. So it's pretty amazing to see certain genres like coming back. Embodied in a really different way, but also like just I don't know, really really fun. And to your point, like it's in in the arts we call that like a triple threat of like, oh yeah, like sing, act, dance is like where the triple threat comes from. And it's like that's what I like to see in musicians as well, is like some of my worst music memories are going to a concert and realizing the singer couldn't sing. Or like, oh, their timing is way off, or oh, the singer is always flat, or it just kills me. I'm like, no, like you're a studio artist. Like I have no interest in listening to something if it can't be performed live.
Yeah, and it's interesting also the different approaches that bands have taken to performing their songs live. Like on the one, I'm just going to go with popular classic rock kind of bands, but like the Eagles were always very proud about every time they played a song live, they played it note for note exactly the way it was on the record, as opposed to like the Grateful Dead, where every time they played live, it was a completely different experience. You had no idea what was coming. You had a general blueprint from the album, but that was about it.
Yeah. Barenaked Ladies is amazing at that. I went to a concert of theirs over New Year's Eve. God, I mean, probably like 20 years ago. And I had no idea that they could just I wouldn't call them a jam band at all, but they went way off script and did these crazy things during the live show that I would have never anticipated. And I personally love that. I love when people are like, okay, we're gonna have some fun here today and do something different. But I also understand the technique of being like, we want to show you that we really do what we say we do, like on the album.
Right. I think I remember listening to two interviews on both ends of that spectrum. One was an interview with Glenn Fry of the Eagles, exactly kind of saying what you said, it's like, hey, people came here to hear what they hear on the album and hear us play it. The other end of the spectrum was Jimmy Page, lead guitarist for Led Zeppelin, who said, we stopped recording music, but we didn't stop playing it because the music would grow. Each song would grow with every time we performed it. It would grow and evolve. So,
to me, that keeps it fresh. It's interesting. I saw the Rolling Stones a bunch of years ago with a friend, actually, who I worked with at the Teal Foundation. And she was like, do you want to go to the Rolling Stones? And the tickets were $600. And I was just thinking to myself, like, oh my God, am I really going to pay $600 for a concert ticket? And she convinced me. She's like, we got to do it. We got to, see Mick Jagger running around on the stage. And what was interesting is the performance piece. It was truly incredible. I don't know how old he was at the time, but I was like, if I have even half that energy when I'm his age, I will think that is a total miracle. And he's prancing around and huge, like this, like King's sort of cape thing. And every song was done exactly as it's done. And I kind of wondered to myself, like, I wonder if this gets like tired or like old for them, because they're just doing it the way it was done. And like, I don't know, maybe they're into it, but I don't know, part of me felt like sad about it, like not for me but for them, like this is their life, performing this song in this exact way in zero deviation.
Well, it's funny, one of my co-founders in one of my companies, his hobby was to do stand-up comedy. And he's just a really funny guy, and he'd tell all these great jokes. And so everyone on our team would always say, oh, hey, tell that other joke. Tell that joke again. Tell that joke again. And you get tired of telling the same joke over and over again. He says, I don't like repeating jokes. I'm like, how many times do you think Abbott and Costello did Who's on First? Right. How many times do you think, Led Zeppelin played Stairway to Heaven? It's like, but you're right. I think from their perspective, it's got to get old at some point.
I think so.
So speaking of wearing capes, I wanted to ask you about something because first of all, you put incredible amount of energy into your homework assignment for creating this playlist. And along the way, you also sent me another playlist that you said you'd created for a Zoom party or something. And those songs that was an eclectic mix, but it was interesting. I wanted to get your backstory on that because we may actually also publish that playlist. I didn't tell you this yet.
Yeah,
I think we may put that playlist up too if you want.
Yeah, no, that'd be fun. Yeah, happy to tell you the backstory on that. I would have to look at the timing on it, but it was early in the pandemic and everybody was under stay-at-home orders. And I am kind of an ambivert, more towards maybe the introvert side. So I was kind of thriving during lockdown. I was like, I get to be at home all the time with my cats and my music and hanging out and doing Zooms. And I loved things like I could hear out the window, like the birds and sort of like the nature was healing meme was getting out there. So I was doing really well, and I decided I was going to throw these Zoom events, and I threw lots of different Zoom events, and one of them was a dance party. And I just invited a bunch of friends to this Zoom dance party, and I made a playlist for it. And yeah, I like agonized over not just like what songs would be on it, but similarly as putting the one for this together of like, want to make sure the transitions in between the songs kind of gel nicely together. And in the dance one that I did, I also wanted a certain energy level at the beginning of like, all right, we're warming up, we're like getting started. And then I want there to be sort of a crescendo of like, all right, this is when we're 8 songs in, we're in this. And then I want there to be a ramp down period as well. And it was super fun. And I had family members on and friends on, and I remember my godchildren jumped onto it, and they're like, they're little. And so it was really, really fun. And it's certainly a very different playlist than the one that I put together first, because like dance music, a lot of RuPaul, and just, yeah, stuff that I wouldn't necessarily like turn on when I want a different vibe. But I was like, all right, like, let's do something fun and different for, what we're all going through right now.
Yeah, I really liked it. I'm gonna have to listen to it. I think it's an hour long for the whole thing. So I'm gonna have to listen to it, but I'll have to listen to it at a point where I can also dance quietly and privately. So we'll see. All right, well, why don't we jump into your playlist, because I really liked it, and I know you put a lot of thought into it. Maybe you can first of all kind of walk me through a little bit of your thought process on how you approached it, because you were very thoughtful about it.
Yeah, it was interesting to put together, because I'm like an album person. I like to listen to whole albums. To me, there's a real art form in that. And so when you ask to put together, like, okay, what are favorites and things like that, part of me is like, oh my God, I'm gonna rip Paranoid Android apart from OK Computer, like sacrilegious. like these things are supposed to go together. But I thought about, what are the songs that I really love? Like if I were, stranded on a desert island or locked in a car for a long time or something, what are the pieces of music that I would really want to have right there at my fingertips? So that was some of the thinking. And then some of the thinking was even a little bit of a story here, of my own musical journey. It's like I have bookended this playlist with two pieces that are more like singer-songwriter acoustic, and that is my family upbringing. That is like, okay, this is the type of music that was in my house all the time. One of the pieces on here is a more classical piece, and I listened to almost exclusively classical music until I was in my mid-teen years. Like I heard pop music on the radio, but I wasn't really interested in it. I have the REM radio song on here. That was the first album that I ever bought. Like I was 11 years old. I don't even know how I picked the album. It was like, okay, this one, somehow it became the first CD, that I ever had. And it just felt like, okay, I want this like playlist to have a progression around it. And then there's different things I found over time, but I wanted it to have sort of a constructed feel to it.
Very nice. It's nice to hear you talk about maybe for me, because I was the same era, right, and grew up with albums, and it was just always, when an album only comes out once every couple of years, you get that, you wait for it to come out, you go, you get it, you like listen to it over and over and over again, reading the liner notes and like all, who's singing what and who played which instrument and what are the lyrics and how does it all hang together. And when you listen to it with, start to finish, you can tell that there's a logical progression, or at least a creative progression, right? Somebody put some thought into what order to put those songs in.
Yeah, no, very much so. And even with certain bands like Mew that I have on the list, a lot of their songs flow from one into the other. And sometimes, like, one of my favorite things to do, and I don't know if you're like this, but there'll be certain little parts of a song where I'm like, ooh, that 5 seconds right there is super interesting and complex. Or like the transition in between, the first song and the second song, super interesting. Like, and I want to hear, just the tail end of that one song and then the tail beginning of the next one. So yeah, I'm always really fascinated by like the whole concept of an album. And in fact, while doing the homework for this, I came across a couple bands I really love that have new albums out. So I haven't had a chance to listen to them yet, but I'm like, ooh, there's a new album. I mean, it's interesting too, because, you and I both come from a time when music was physical, as far as, like purchasing music and things like that. And there's pieces of that I really miss, because out of sight is definitely very out of mind for me. And also there's music that I discovered as I was growing up. Like I babysat for a family who had this huge music collection, and I just, just like a bookshelf, and you walk over and you see what they have. And I pulled out Nick Drake's Pink Moon album randomly. I just thought the cover was cool. and was entranced. And I was like, man, like, I feel like it's that sort of spontaneity of being able to find things because it's gone digital. It's there's a loss there, to me anyways. I don't know if you feel the same way about it. I love being able to have all the music I want in my pocket, but I also know a lot of it is compressed and it doesn't sound quite as good. And, you know, like, so there's like, I don't know, there's pros and cons to the digital music thing.
Yeah, I mean, when it becomes digital, like every song essentially from the outside is the same. You know, it's just bits and bytes, and there's nothing to distinguish it until you get into it.
Like break apart an album really easy, right? It's like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, like, you know, I come from the days of making a mixtape for somebody, and it's like you had to sit there and hit record and do all this stuff. And it was like, it was a real sort of challenge to do it, but also there was that like purity of like, no, this album is an album. And that has certainly gotten lost at this point.
You know, it's funny. For me, one of the turning points was when CDs came out, and they were still set up as albums, but then the CD players had the shuffle function, which was very jarring for me.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
Because that's when all of a sudden, okay, yeah, that's a different listening experience, and it was fresh and it was okay, I could see that. But then, but somebody put a lot of thought into what order to do these songs in.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah, no, I get, you know, I'm like making up this funny analogy in my head of like, yeah, if you like bought a piece of art, like an oil painting, and then what you did is you like melted down the oil and put it in a different configuration, and you're like, it's the same. Like, no, it's not the same.
All right. Well, do you want to like walk us through one by one the songs?
Sure.
Just tell us a little bit about them, because like I don't know a lot of these, so this is good.
Okay, great, excellent. Yeah, happy to chat them out. I have the list in front of me, so that's why I'm looking down a little bit. But yeah, I said I wanted to sort of bookend with sort of folk singer-songwriting stuff. So Guggenheim Grotto is a band that I came across in my 20s. And it is so true that the stuff, at least for me, and I think a lot of people, the stuff you listen to your 20s somehow gets like ingrained in you in a way, yeah, that I don't have a lot of words for, but it like really sticks. Like it doesn't leave you. But they have they do a lot of beautiful songwriting. Like the songs are really like poetry, and the guitar playing is just really, really, really lovely, and very much reminds me of sort of like different types of music that I grew up with. So the next one is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but Nisi, Dominus. I picked it because I came across Andreas Scholl, who is a contratenor. And the first time I ever heard him sing, it was a Spotify find, I was completely blown away. So contratenor, you know, means the person is male, but can sing in like an alto and sometimes like a lower soprano range. And it is just some of the most gorgeous singing. There's back in my like older sort of music studies, because I was also a music major in college, one of the things that we would study are different sort of like vocal range and what it means. And there's a certain purity to the sound that this person can get, that really, I mean, the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God. I was like, wait, is this a guy? And then I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, wait, this is a man singing this. I was so surprised. And I hadn't thought about you know, like that type of ability in a long time. So really, really blew me away. And also like on this playlist is really pulling into like, yeah, like this is the type of stuff that I was listening to when I was very young to when I was a teenager, pretty much all the time. In fact, there's this funny story where I had my own stereo equipment in my room, and I was probably playing Rachmaninoff. I was huge into Rachmaninoff at the time. And my mom came like storming into my room. I was a teenager, And she said, can't you be a normal teenager and at least like turn your music up? And she blasted the classical higher, which like my mom's like loves rock and country and stuff like that. And then she stormed out of the room. It was really funny. I was like, okay, that's hilarious. Or we would always know who had driven the family car because we all shared a car because of which music was on. Mine was always classical. My sister was always like punk rock and my mom was always country. So always funny to see those different associations.
So I have to say that you are the first person I've talked with who grew up and as a teenager was blasting Rachmaninoff instead of
no, totally
Grateful Dead or the Stones or something. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. I don't know. I didn't really get interested in popular music until later. Which brings me to REM. I don't know how it happened. I was probably around 11 because that's the year that it came out in 91. That's the year the album came out, but it was the first album that I ever bought. Like that was like a pop album. And it's just fun. Like it's just fun music. This particular song has some neat elements where like there's a sort of like a, I don't even know. I'm not sure what instrument it is. I'm like, it kind of has a mandolin-y feel, kind of like harpsichord-y feel in it. And then of course there's singing, but there's also rap in there also. So it's like, it's pretty eclectic. Yeah, just a fun album. When I think about Radiohead and Paranoid Android, that was a big sort of turning point for me. I was probably like, actually, I guess it's probably around 17 when it came out. And I got my hands on the album and just listened to it on loop constantly. And then in fact, there was a class that I had, and I don't remember what the prompt was in class, but it was like combine two things that you wouldn't normally think go together. And my classical brain and my I love Paranoid Android brain was coming together on, hey, this song seems like it's in sonata form. I wonder if that's right. And I went through and like mapped it all out and I was like, oh yeah, this is in sonata form. That's really cool.
Really?
Yeah. And my high school English teacher was blown away. He's like, you did what? Like, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, you just sort of map it out. Like here's A and here's A again and here's B. And so it was really cool to see my like love of both of these worlds sort of coming together in that way. And the album is just masterful. Like I feel like very sacrilegious, like pulling it out of OK Computer and being like, here it is all by itself. Like a lot of these songs I feel that way about, of like, no, it's the whole album that's great, not just like the song by itself. But yeah.
One of the things that I found when I did this exercise and others have found is it's not just the 10 songs, or in your case, 11 songs. Yeah. It's knowing all the ones that you left out.
Yes. Yeah. And that even happened today where it was like, oh man, like I heard this band Hem that I hadn't thought about for a long time because Spotify started giving me recommendations based on this playlist of stuff that I just haven't thought of in a decade, 15 years, something like that. And I was like, wow, man, this algorithm is like scary, amazing. But it's true. Yeah. When I first sent this playlist to you, I kept adding things because I knew I was going to subtract things later. And it was definitely hard to pick. And some of the songs too that I picked, like later on, there's the Zookeeper's Boy by Mew. The song I really wanted to put on here is a song of theirs called Special, but their album is so like albumy, where as soon as you're into the next song, you're right there. There's no like fade in or fade out. And it's so jarring. I was like, for me, trying to make this into a concept here, it's just too much. I can't do it. So I was like, I got to cut that one out and put this other one in. An artist that I more recently got into is Ali X. This song, Fresh Laundry, I just love so much because it is she takes something that is so mundane, laundry, and like is talking about like the first lyric is, I want to be near fresh laundry, And it's like, what? Who sings about laundry? Like, this is so strange. And it's got like this interesting backbeat to it. And the song is really about sort of like wishing things were different. Like my interpretation of the song, it's like somebody who has maybe been in a depression or something like that, and they're wanting their life to be in a different way. And it sounds like in some sense that they're like ready for that to happen. But I think it's just really masterful of her to be singing about laundry. I'm like, who does that? That doesn't happen very often.
And it's not even a country song, right?
No, it is not a country song.
I could see a country artist talking about fresh laundry.
It's true. That's a fair point. Now I'm wondering, I'm like, with my guitar studies, I'm like, could I turn fresh laundry into a country song? Like, that'd be hilarious. That'd be really, really fun. Yeah, so she's been a great like new addition. That album came out just a couple of years ago. And I always like when I find things that are like newer, because I do want to be careful that I don't get caught being like, I'm only listening to the stuff that I listened to when I was, in my 20s, which was 20 years ago. Like, I don't want to do that. I like liking what I like, but I also want to keep current. The next song I have on here is Ben Folds, Zach and Sarah. I love Ben Folds. I'm a total junkie. I've seen him in concert many, many times. He has masterful audience participation that he does. And as an instrumentalist and as a band geek and stuff like that, he likes to break up the audience in these pieces and be like, okay, you guys are going to sing this part of the song and y'all are going to do this. And there's something about like that large group participatory experience that I imagine is also what people might feel when they're like together in a large church or like singing together in some sort of group like that. I didn't have anything like that growing up. So I think music kind of became that space. And as soon as I started going to Ben Folds concerts, and I was like, oh my God, we're getting to sing together and there's hundreds of us in here and we're just pouring our hearts out into this. This is amazing. This particular song is very like fun and upbeat and quirky. And I like Ben Folds is just such a favorite. Like he had to make it onto this album.
Total aside, but this whole crowd participation, I did my undergrad at Cal at Berkeley.
Oh yeah.
And so we were the Golden Bears, right? So go Bears. Yeah. And so at home football games, you have the student section on one side of the stadium and the alumni section at the other side of the stadium. And so at some point during the game, or several times during the game, the student section will say, hey, alumni, go. And then the other side, the alumni say, Bears. And then the students say, go. And then Bears and go, Bears. Yeah. I don't know. There's something about, the crowd.
There's something, yeah. There's something tribal, I think. It's like, oh, like we are doing this thing together and the rhythm and it all adds up. I mean, it makes sense to me why that would be fun.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. The next group I have on here is Mew. Mew is incredible. I don't even know how to describe what they do. It's like, I don't know, sort of maybe psychedelic rock, like somewhere in that vein. I first heard this song that I added on here, The Zookeeper's Boy, and it is just weird. Like it kind of reminds me of Queen a bit, where it's like very theatrical. A lot of the things on this playlist also tell a story. I love songs that tell a story to it. I just gravitate towards it. And I think many songs do have that like storytelling ability, but this is just, yeah, it's strange. I don't know how else to describe it, but the first time I ever heard it, I was like, whoa, this is different. Like, who are these people? And I got to hear them in person right before the pandemic. They had come to San Francisco and I was so excited because I've been a big fan for a long time, but not been able to see them live. Like they perform a lot in Europe and their in-person show. I can't remember if we talked about this like as we were recording it right beforehand, but I love groups that are the triple threat, where it's like they're writing their songs, they're great studio recorders, but even better, they're incredible musicians live. And these guys are that. In addition, they do these insane light shows during their concerts. And I don't know, I mean, I imagine they must work with other people to craft these, but it's like crafted towards the music and where the whole show is heading. So in that sort of album way, their show feels like a full performance. So they are really, really amazing. If anyone gets to see them live, like go do it. Even if I've discovered so many musicians sometimes live when they're, and actually one of them is coming up here, Rufus Wainwright, where like they're the opener for somebody else. And then I'm like, oh my God, this person is totally incredible. How have I not come across this before?
One of our other guests on the show said that's one of the primary ways he discovers new music is he will purposely get to a show early and sit through the opening acts.
Oh yeah. No, sometimes the opening acts, I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like, this is even better than what I came for. The next one on here is a more recent one. I think this was 2018. So there's this guy out of Sacramento, this group. Well, he calls himself Hobo Johnson. Oh no, he calls the whole group is Hobo Johnson and the Lovemakers. And I discovered Hobo because he did one of the NPR Tiny Desk concerts. And I don't know, I probably should have been doing more work that day, but got sucked into this Tiny Desk concert YouTube rabbit hole. And before, they hadn't announced any winners yet. They were just releasing all these little concerts. Have you heard of the Tiny Desk concert?
I've heard of it. I haven't heard it though.
It's so cool. It's really, really fun. And I came across Hobo Johnson and this song Peach Scone, and I love it. People are super polarized about this. I must have listened to this song, and I love the live video of it in particular, because it's just funny and raw, and it's very teenage angsty and thinking about sort of love in all the wrong ways. But I think he was like 18 when he did this. So in some sense, to me, it's perfect because it's really, really real. And he kind of has this like rap, heart screaming thing, but I just think it's brilliant. Like, but other people I've shown this to are like, I don't get it. And I think it's every time I listen to him, I just think he's one of the most brilliant people out there. And he's an incredible rapper, and his, it's poetry, it's rhyme. And it's when I'm like really taking in the lyrics, I'm like, oh, he's like really saying some important things here. Like, this is really great. And to me, part of it too, especially given my work with 1517 and working with young people, I love to find like young artists who are doing something, because it also makes me think, well, what are they going to be doing in like 4 years or 5 years or 10 years from now? And so I feel this way about Hobo Johnson. So love him or hate him, I think he's brilliant.
Well, he's one of the ones on this list that I did not know, so I'm going to have to go listen to this. Yeah.
Watch what I would recommend, because it's like this whole experience thing of watch the Tiny Desk concert of him doing Peach Scone live. For clarity, it's the entry that he sends, because he also does it live at the NPR station. I'm talking about before he does that, but it's just this, the whole way the video is put together, it's just, I don't know, there's something that is very authentic about it to me. And it's done in one take, which I really respect. It's like, oh my God, they did this in one take and like nailed it. Amazing. So that performance piece is really important to me. All right, coming up on the last few. So King by Florence and the Machine. This is a new one. This came out in 2022. I was flying back from Paris, and it's a 12-hour flight, and I had a pair of headphones, and they have their entertainment system, and I was like, oh, let me look through the music area, which I wouldn't normally do on a plane, but when you have 11 or 12 hours on a plane, it's like, all right, why not? And I had these nice headphones that they gave everybody to use. And I started listening to this album, and I was like, what? Like, what is this? Like, what am I listening to? And I listened to the entire album probably 3 times on that flight, maybe 4. I really like, when I like something, like one, I know it right away. I'm like, nope, this is my jam. And then I like to dissect it a lot. And this song is interesting because it builds up slow and then like gets very complex and sort of winds down in this softer way. But the song is about her sort of struggling with sort of her role in the world, because she's kind of split. She's a performer, she's an artist, she's a woman. You know, she's not married, she doesn't have kids. There's this question of like, well, is she supposed to do that? Like, or is she supposed to be the king of her kingdom in the music realm? And so I love the authenticity and like the inherent self-storytelling there. And it's the first song on this new album. And I listened to her do some interviews about the album, and she's like, yeah, the last couple of albums we experimented with minimalism. And she said, I'm done with that. And I was like, and it shows like in this new album, it is very complex. Last two. So Rufus Wainwright, I came across when I was at a Ben Folds show and was just blown away by his artistry. He comes from a musical family that is also extremely talented and also like very theatrical, kind of like operatic. I really like that like grandiosity sometimes in a singer. So I added him here to the list. And then the last one is the bookmark of the end of like sort of going back to my roots again and home with Eric Clapton's Lonely Stranger and the acoustic version. I also love listening to acoustic versions. One thing that didn't make it onto here is Alice in Chains acoustic album. It's fabulous. It's so, so good. But I love this Eric Clapton album. And it, you know, we talked about CDs. This CD is in my dad's minivan that he has. And every time I go home, I drive his minivan and I listen to this album. And it's like that, you know, there's that consistency of this album is always going to be in this minivan. And yeah, I loved this as a bookend to the whole assignment.
Well, I love how much thought you put into it and how you put it together. You should have been a music producer. That's what you should have done, and put together albums for people.
Oh man, that'd be so fun. Oh yeah, that'd be pretty amazing. I don't even know what that path would look like, but yeah, I do it my own way on my little playlist.
Well, it was very nice, and I'm very thankful for how much effort you put into this. Yeah. And I also like your other playlist, so I think we may end up putting that one on here as well.
By all means, go for it. I put a lot of work into both of them, so I'm like, all right, cool. We got okay, this is Danielle Can't Live Without These Artists playlist, and here's the we're just having some fun playlist.
We're just having fun. I love it.
Cool.
All right. Well, with that, let's wrap this up. I loved hearing all of this. I loved hearing your background. I did not know about your clarinet playing and all that. So, and I think you've given hope for a lot of teenagers who are listening to Rachmaninoff right now.
I hope so.
So thank you so much. And it was great having you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Danielle Strachman. As usual, we will include all of her information in the description below, as well as her 11-song playlist. Until next time, I'm Guillermo from Fortivo Music Channel, wishing you happy listening.